Hey Owen, hey Matthew, hope you both had an amazing summer. Today we're running through our dissertation preparation and kind of diving deep into what our research question is. But before we do that, let's kind of look at the aims of this presentation. So we'll be presenting an initial research question, offering illustrations of collected research, including methodologies, theories, and field experts. We also share the references that we've already collected. So let's dive into it. What is our research question? Our research question is, how does perceived fraudulence relate to imposter syndrome in the gaming industry? And how can motivational theories and an expanded imposter phenomenon model guide our understanding and interventions? And you're probably wondering, what does that mean? So let's break it down. And first, we're taking a deep dive into something called perceived fraudulence and how it links to imposter syndrome. Perceived fraudulence essentially means feeling like you don't really deserve your own success. And that's a key part of what imposter syndrome is. Now, let's talk context. Our research is all about the gaming industry. We're focusing on understanding imposter syndrome right here in this unique professional world. Next up is motivation theories. We're going to explore how different factors that motivate us might be connected to imposter syndrome. What drives people and how does it relate to feeling like an imposter? And then we're aiming to expand on an existing model called the imposter phenomenon. This means we'll be building on what we already know about imposter syndrome, possibly adapting it to fit the industry needs better. And then finally, practicality is always key. We're not just here for theory, we're aiming to provide real world guidance and interventions. We want to help individuals and the gaming industry tackle imposter syndrome head on with actionable advice. So breaking down that research question even further, what's our premise and what's our goal? So let's set the stage of our research. Here's the premise. In the gaming industry, many individuals grapple with imposter syndrome. That means they often doubt their own abilities and feel like they don't belong. We're diving into this by looking at something called perceived fraudulence. That's when you feel like a fraud, even if you're not. But we're not stopping there. We're also exploring how different theories about motivation and more extensive imposter phenomenon model can help us understand and tackle this issue. Why? Because we want to create interventions and support systems that truly make a difference. So that's our starting point, and it's kind of a big one. So we're going to uncover what's going on in the game industry and how we can make it better for everyone. And then let's talk about the big picture and what we're aiming to achieve with this dissertation. Our main goal is to understand imposter syndrome. We're honing in on something called that perceived fraudulence and how it fits into the whole imposter syndrome picture and why it really matters. But it doesn't stop there. We're also exploring that motivation theories. We want to know how different things motivate people, especially in gaming, and how this can all be connected to that thing called imposter syndrome. Then there's the exciting part. We're crafting an expanded model for imposter syndrome. It's not just about individuals, it's about the whole system, both personally and systematic factors. The model will give us a holistic view of how everything works. And then lastly, we're not doing this just for the sake of theory. As we mentioned previously, we're doing it to make a real impact. We're going to use what we learn to create practical ways to help people in the game industry with imposter syndrome. We're talking about real actionable solutions. So in a nutshell, we're adding to what we know about imposter syndrome in gaming and giving professionals in this field the tools they need to succeed and their well-being. So what's our key theories? How are we going to apply our research? So let's explore the imposter syndrome framework and get a better grasp of what's out there. So first in line, we have Clancy Imes' imposter phenomenon model. This is like the cornerstone outlining the fundamental aspects of imposter syndrome, including the concept of that perceived fraudulence. It serves as our starting point for comprehending imposter syndrome. And then we can move on to something more elaborate. We have Jung's 5 types of imposters. Jung took the foundation laid by Clancy Imes and expanded upon it. She identified 5 distinct types or patterns of imposter syndrome. You have the perfectionist, driven by the fear of making mistakes and setting extremely high standards. And then you have Superwoman, Superman, striving to excel in all areas of life, often exceeding themselves. And then the natural genius, believing that success should come easily and struggling when faced with challenges. The soloist, preferring to work alone and avoiding asking for help. As well as the expert, feeling they need to know everything about a subject before considering themselves competent. These categories help us to categorize and analyze the various ways imposter syndrome can manifest within one of us. These frameworks are like our trusting maps as we navigate through this complex terrain of imposter syndrome, with Jung's 5 types as our guideposts along the way. So looking into the motivation theories. First on our list is that self-determination theory, also known as SDT. SDT takes a deep dive into motivation, both the kind that comes from within and the kind that comes from external factors. This theory becomes really important when we're trying to figure out how motivation factors play a role in imposter syndrome and the behavior we see in the gaming industry. Next up is the achievement goal theory. This one focuses on how people set and chase after their goals. It's pretty handy for understanding how folks dealing with imposter syndrome approach their work and the challenges that come their way. So these theories are like our toolkits for understanding what drives people and how it connects to that imposter syndrome. Now, let's talk about conjunctive behavioral theory. We've got something called conjunctive restructuring within this theory. It's all about helping individuals shift those pesky negative thought patterns. And you're probably wondering, why is this important? Well, it can be super useful in interventions when we're designing them to tackle and lessen imposter syndrome. In a nutshell, this is a tool that can help folks change their thinking for the better. And then we have identity theory. This one's all about how we build our identities and how these identities influence what we do. Now, when we bring this into the gaming world, it can help us understand how imposter syndrome messes with a person's sense of belonging. So basically, it's a way to figure out how imposter syndrome ties into who we are in the gaming community. Now, let's talk about organizational and leadership theories. First up, we have the organizational culture and climate theory. These are all about figuring out how the atmosphere at work and the whole vibe of the organization can either make imposter syndrome worse or help make it better. And then there's transformational leadership. This is about understanding how different leadership styles can affect how employees feel about themselves and their abilities. It's a key piece of the puzzle when we're thinking about interventions. These theories help us uncover how workplace can either fuel or fight imposter syndrome. So as we dive into understanding imposter syndrome, we'll also use different tools and methods to collect and analyze data. These methods will help us explore our research question effectively. So as we explore our research methods, we can take a closer look at case studies. So imagine these as our detective stories within the gaming industry. We'll be diving deep into specific gaming companies or individuals to unravel the mysteries of imposter syndrome, motivation, and interventions, all within real-world contexts. For instance, our first case study could be the indie developer struggle. This is a case study on an independent game developer who grappled with imposter syndrome during game development. And then we have a game studio's journey. This is an exploration of a gaming studio's effort to combat imposter syndrome within its team. And then the navigating the corporate ladder. This is a case study on a professional's experience within imposter syndrome while advancing in a large gaming corporation. These case studies are like our magnifying glasses, helping us to zoom in on real life instances of imposter syndrome and how it's impacted individuals and organizations. We'll uncover valuable insights that can inform our understanding and interventions better. But now we've got case studies out of the way, let's talk about literature review and meta-analysis. Imagine this is our treasure hunt through existing knowledge. We'll be digging deep into literature on imposter syndrome within the game industry. And here's how we do it. We're using secondary data analysis. This means we're reviewing all the existing research and conducting a meta-analysis. Essentially, we're piecing together what others find out about imposter syndrome. This helps us to get that big picture and spot any patterns and gaps in our understanding. For instance, we can consider these examples. So a comprehensive review on imposter syndrome in gaming professionals, imposter phenomenon in gaming, a systematic literature review, understanding imposter syndrome in game development, which is a meta-analysis of quantitative studies. These examples show how we'll gather insights from existing research to build up a comprehensive understanding of what imposter syndrome is and how we can create this model to better help the industry. And then let's talk about surveys and questionnaires. This is kind of our first-hand research, what we're going to do to find out about it. So think of this as our data collection tools. Like questionnaires, you might feel like we're using quantitative research methods to gather information from a big group of gaming professionals. Specifically, we want to understand how common imposter syndrome is, how perceived fraudulence plays a role, and what motivates these people to do what they do. So finding the right experts. Identifying experts in the field can be a game changer for our research on imposter syndrome. These experts have paved the way in understanding imposter syndrome, motivation theory, and the gaming industry psychology. So let's take a look at the 4 main field experts that we'll be using, but aren't limited to. So we have Dr. Pauline Rose Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes. These 2 experts are the founders of imposter syndrome. Their work forms the bedrock of our understanding on this phenomenon. Their research is like the roadmap to the heart of imposter syndrome, giving us crucial insights into this psychology experience. They are pivotal figures in our exploration. And then we have Dr. Albert. He's a motivation expert known for his research on self-efficiency and motivation. His work helps us to understand what drives individuals and how they see their abilities in imposter syndrome. Exploring his research can help us unlock the secrets of motivation that we crucially need to know. And then we have Dr. Richard Rand and Dr. Edward Deci. These researchers are famous for their self-determination theory, that SDT that we were talking about earlier, which explores the intersync and extrsync motivations. We can use their theories as guiding lights to understand how motivations affect behavior and addresses imposter syndrome. And then finally, we have Dr. Rosabeth Moss. Her expertise in workplace culture and leadership is pretty much invaluable. Her research focuses on motivation and self-esteem at work, which can be super insightful when applied to the gaming industry. It reveals how culture and leadership impacts professionals dealing with imposter syndrome. And then finally, before we end this presentation, for this dissertation, I'll be using the Harvard referencing style to ensure proper citations of sources. And then here are just a couple of examples of how I will format my references. This referencing style ensures that I give proper credit to the sources I use within my research. But thank you for your attention on my research question about imposter syndrome. And if you have any questions or would like to discuss this research further, please feel free to reach out. But have a wonderful day, and I look forward to hearing from you.